Hi, the piece of mass media that I will be analysing is a news article that was posted to Perth Now on the 20th of September, titled Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif says we won't blink to defend our territory. On the surface, this article would appear to be a fairly neutral take on the recent geopolitical tension of the Middle East, whilst also touching on the drone attacks to Saudi oil production that occurred on the 14th of September. I will begin by doing a contextual analysis of the source. The article was initially posted to the New York Post website on the 19th of September. It had then appeared on both news.com Australia and Perth Now on the 20th of September, a day later. Despite being published on 3 different sites, the only difference that occurred between any of these uploads was on the initial publication of the article on the New York Post website, where the title was Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif threatens all-out war. Why change the title? Well, I think that has something to do with the intended target audience, with the initial article being posted to an American audience, whereas later on Perth Now being shared to an Australian local Perth audience. Despite being posted to different websites, the connection between all of these platforms is that they are all under the ownership of 21st Century Fox News Corp Group, an American mass media company. So, the role of mass media has been crucial in the publication of this story, and we must acknowledge the motivations that big media has in the information that they are trying to project. So the article may appear to be fairly neutral in its take of the current geopolitical crisis occurring in the Persian Gulf. But if we combine this with more contextual information and look at things like the structure and the voice, we can see that it isn't as unbiased as it first may appear. On the republished version of the article, we are not given the name of the author, but if we can follow back to the original publication that occurred on the New York Post, we see that the article was written by journalist Yaron Steinbuch. A graduate of the Columbia School of Journalism, Steinbuch is also a former Israeli Defense Force soldier and an auxiliary police officer. This is important contextual information, given that Iran's 2 biggest regional rivals are Israel and Saudi Arabia, 2 of the countries that also happen to be US proxies in the Middle East. Couple this with growing political tension between the US and Iran over the last several years, in particular the last year, warmongering rhetoric and a narrative towards Iran being the aggressor in the region has become a common theme throughout mainstream Western media. Bearing this in mind, the voice of the article constantly frames Iran as the aggressor of the region. This is despite the fact that Saudi Arabia and its neighbour the UAE have waged a 4-year war on regional neighbour Yemen. And this is a piece of information that is lacking from the article. The connection here between Iran and Yemen is the Houthi group, the rebels who are currently fighting Saudi Arabia in the war against Yemen. So why frame Iran as the regional aggressor when the Saudis have in fact been involved in a 4-year-long genocide of Yemenis people backed by the US? Despite Mr. Zarif being quoted as saying Iran was not involved in the attacks, the article continually questions this, reinforcing this narrative that we should not trust Iran. Considering the Perth Now audience, along with Australian foreign policy, by framing Iran as the protagonist of the current situation, the article aids in creating an environment where public support for future military intervention into Iran could be viable. Ultimately, I believe this to be the motivation for the article, as American mass media has proven itself to be a mechanism for the US to sow disinformation as to achieve its foreign policy goals. There is a lack of diversity in the voice that we hear, as we are only quoted both politicians and royal family members, no working class people. The article, in framing Iran in this negative way, achieves its newsworthiness, 1, through the title, which is inflammatory, implying that Iran is ready to start war, and 2, by the effects of these drone attacks on Saudi oil production, petrol prices rising, which is one way that this directly affects the Perth audience. So despite appearing to be a neutral news article, the text can be viewed as a piece of propaganda in that it frames Iran in a certain way while leaving out information which could be crucial to forming a view that is both objective and truthful.